esteem is indicated by an Irish Film Institute retrospective of Spielberg's work in January 2012, and the British Film Institute's use of images of E.T. in posters publicizing BFI South Bank, previously the National Film Theatre, in 2015. Nevertheless, background to the companion includes blanket dismissal, not least by critics and academics who confuse Spielberg with other blockbuster directors. Enormous commercial appeal suggests that Spielberg's work must be symptomatic, expressive, and reflexive of the culture it responds to and contributes toward shaping, although the exact relationship is typically a matter of presupposition. Many pundits adopt an oppositional stance, either elitist or more or less consciously political, in relation to Hollywood cinema as predictable propaganda for the American way, of which Spielberg's output is at once one of the most salient, apparently typical, and hence, in view of its international success, most reprehensible embodiments. Spielberg's apparent adherence to classical form is, by many critics, confused, conflated, or equated with political conservatism, not least because of the association of blockbuster filmmaking with business and marketing strategies focused on maximizing profit and thereby pleasing the largest possible audience. Such classicism nevertheless sits awkwardly alongside Spielberg's multivocal address to different audiences, attendant stylistic range, and adoption of technological advancements in the realization of his audio-visual ambitions, and his centrality to economic and industrial transformations. The latter associate him with the post-classical Hollywood model of complex intersecting interests, in terms of which his films are too often associated erroneously, at least those that he has directed are, with simplistic, marketing-led, action-driven spectacle at the expense of character, narrative complexity, and thematic significance. Such assumptions are challenged and repeatedly disproven in the essays featured here. With Lincoln and Bridge of Spies, Spielberg has continued to consolidate a career phase in which much of his output, less characterized by blockbuster values than was always the case, receives respect, although not universal admiration. Those two films maintain his lifelong exploration of and experimentation with cinematic form, based on or alluding to precedents both mainstream and, more than negative criticism acknowledges, sometimes notably abstruse. In this parallel concern with showmanship and artistry, based on the director's extensive knowledge of the medium's history and ceaseless curiosity about its function and possibilities, Spielberg echoes two of his more obvious formative influences, Alfred Hitchcock and John Ford, who, until nearly 50 years into their filmmaking, were similarly not taken seriously by arbiters of taste and quality. Even at its most stately and classical, Spielberg's filmmaking does not default to a safe, unquestioning, would-be mimetic mode, but rather uses style to highlight, should the spectator be inclined to notice, its own mediation and construction. Self-consciously dialogic positioning in relation to precedents in Hollywood and alternative traditions interrogates the adequacy of Lincoln, Bridge of Spies, or indeed any cinema, to events and issues portrayed. As an example of blindness to such possibility, former Village Voice film critic and academic J. Hoberman has reprinted in a book his original review of The Terminal. The unamended article follows new material that describes the same presidential election year's extraordinary pageant of Ronald Reagan's funeral as subsuming all political conflict in a simplified, sentimental, personality-driven narrative, the year's preeminent example of Spielbergization. Gratuitous assumptions are made with the expectation of knee-jerk agreement, particularly offensive in that one might concur with the writer's worldview generally if reasoned evidence replaced the self-righteous harangue. Instead, Hoberman glosses over the function and form of funerals, the links between personality, privilege, and the presidency, and a particularly conservative one at that, aligned explicitly with religious groups such as the moral majority, the relationship between American individualism, popular